Wicked. So, welcome back to the first episode of Months in Motion for 2026. So, we had a really busy year last year, and I'm super excited to be kicking off the first episode of 2026 with a studio that I really, really admire. Been following their work for a long, long time. Today, we are talking with two people who have fundamentally changed how design studios approach motion, branding, and community. One leads the creative vision. One ensures the vision can actually survive and thrive in the real world. Together, they represent something rare in the design industry, a studio that's gotten bigger without getting cynical and that's maintained its independence while joining a global network. Today, we're going to talk about the story of Studio DUMBAR, past, present, and where motion design is heading next. The studio specializes in motion, sound, visual identity, and creative coding, with some amazing clients, including people like Instagram, Google, Apple, and OpenAI, which we're definitely going to be jumping into later on. Today, we're joined by Liza and Enebeis. I hope I said that right. I know
Okay, forgiven. Wait, I'm waiting to hear his name now.
Liza is the creative director and partner at Studio DUMBAR/DEPT, one of the world's most award-winning design studios. Liza holds an MA from the Royal College Arts and spent formative years at Pentagram in London. Also the host of Type Radio, a podcast featuring over 550 interviews with designers and creative thinkers, as well as an elected member of AGI. Alongside Liza today, we have Wouter Dirks, the business director and partner at Studio DUMBAR/DEPT, holding an MSc in business administration from Rotterdam, and was responsible for helping the studio grow globally while protecting its creative independence. Wouter represents a new model of agency leadership, one that prioritizes sustainable growth, meaningful client relationships, and business practices that support rather than compromise creative excellence. They said wiser then. Liza, great to be joining you up by you both. Thanks so much for jumping on with us.
Thanks for this great intro. It's quite a mouthful.
This is the best
Thank you so much. With myself, Jack is joining again for another episode, so super excited to have our creative director, Jack Last, as well, in for yet another episode, which I'm sure you'll see his face for plenty more as we move in this year.
That's it. Looking forward to it.
Amazing. Wicked. I'm just going to dive straight into the questions because I'm super excited to pick your brains, as I said, and hear some more about the amazing work that your studio has been doing. So your studio has pioneered the approach of bringing motion designers into projects from early conceptual phases rather than treating it as an afterthought, something that we're really big believers in. Could you walk us through a little bit on a specific project where this approach has fundamentally changed the creative outcome, perhaps compared to how motion was traditionally handled in branding?
Yeah, to start with, pioneers is, I think, a very, very big word. Yes, we've been championing motion and then we believe it, but of course there's other colleagues around us in the field that we really, really respect. They do different work, but they're also equally pioneering. So I don't want to just say like it's only us. And then when it comes to projects that we start off with motion, for example, North Sea Jazz Festival is one that could only work the way it does through motion. And we started sketching in motion. And if you think about sound, it is a jazz festival. Sound is very much related to motion. It behaves in the same way. You cannot touch it and you feel it. And the same thing, of course, with motion, you do see it. But again, has that ephemeral effect to it. And through motion, we wanted to capture how sound behaves. So we started sketching in motion. And once we found a way or something that looked like what we wanted to capture, we said, okay, how do we take that idea, that feeling of movement, back into static? So when you look at North Sea Jazz Festival, all the static work, all the printed work, that also captures the movement.
But I think any project you work on changes drastically if you take motion from the early get-go on in your creative process. It has an effect on any creative work. A little bit more so with some projects like North Sea Jazz, but it's only logical that if you incorporate sound in the first sketching phase, it will also give a really different result.
Yeah, and it also enables you to see wider. I mean, through motion, there is also that element of storytelling. You don't you're not fixed to that single idea. I know I think in the traditional sense, we always grew up with like that, the logo has to tell the story, that book cover, the poster in one instance. But it's now it's a lot bigger than that. Of course, posters still exist, and book covers and printed work is there, but now we have so many more possibilities to tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I think it's really interesting as well, like the more traditional way of kind of taking the static element and then, afterwards it's then motion and then it's then sound, and kind of flipping that on its head a bit and really reversing the process. I think that's a really interesting way to approach it, and it creates something quite unique as well. And it kind of takes the client on a bit more of a journey as well, instead of like being locked into, here's the static logo, here's how it's animated, and then here's it with sound. And it kind of takes that and kind of flips it on its head, which, works really well.
Correct.
It doesn't really flip it on his head. It makes everything work at the same time. So it's not like I take words literally. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
It mean you start with sound and then, but they work at the same time. So you have people think about a sound logo, people think about motion while they are sketching on the logo, and they are constantly iterating. So it's like a matrix, like that people are in this energy going left and right and back and forth instead of one way, and then, oh no, it doesn't work. Oh, we go back, and then we go back. No, so it's constantly, it's like that.
Plus, it's also how we look at brands now. I mean, it is not. Yeah, sometimes, maybe you see a logo on the back of a truck, but most of the times it's digital. You're online. So the behavior changes. So it's almost inevitable that you can work either way or in any way.
I think, it's like, I'm curious actually. I think especially with like brands that are built around music, like motion has to be involved. I think in brands in general, it has to be, but with something like music, it's so intrinsic, right? But I'm curious, when you were saying about kind of everything working at the same time in terms of sonic, motion, and the branding design, how do your designers kind of come together on that? Are you having sound designers, motion designers, and graphic designers, or have you got more of a team of kind of like multidisciplinary kind of skill sets?
Well, people have a specialism. Somebody is a motion designer, but can also, for instance, do graphic design. But we have a group of motion designers, a group of visual designers, and we have a group of sound designers. A lot of them are multidisciplinary, and take on several roles. But people still have a specialism in that sense.
Yeah, and the other thing is also alongside the specialisms, there are people in the team, like we have like super specialists, sound, or a type designer, but there's people in the team that have more of a bigger overview, that understand also the different elements that come together. And that enable, like when you're leading the project, that is really, really helpful. So you understand the different character, like what does it mean to work in sound, and what does it mean to work purely visual or coding, for example.
Yeah, I think that more holistic kind of understanding is definitely more important nowadays, where everything is, like you said, it's merging, it's working alongside one another. Just interested to hear how that kind of synchronizes up with across the team.
It's they're generalists and specialists working together. I think that's how you would describe it.
Okay, cool. I like that a lot. So jumping into as well, I think another thing that your studio always does amazingly that I really admire is interactive design. So kind of jumping into interactive motion, not just thinking about how it will just like play out on auto, but like how does it react in different scenarios, spaces, formats? Again, is this something that you kind of build into the process as you're designing from the early phases? And are you kind of like back and forthing with the clients on this, or is this something that you kind of just figure out your own on the kind of creative journey? How does the interactive elements work?
Great.
Interactive elements, you mean like the motion tools, or the installation, the experiential work?
I guess experiential could be one, or for example, like the stuff you did with Instagram, where it was kind of like that more like engagement, like the way that the elements motion was kind of coming into play with that.
Yours.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is, I think, part of it's not an afterthought. That is also part of the question at the start. If we're talking about micro animations, how do you interact with the tools themselves? That becomes like a longer search that we look into. The majority of the work, though, is not like interactive in terms of experiential, like interacting with a particular screen. On the other hand, there are, I would say, Demo Festival. That's a festival that we have initiated here at the studio that is organized every 2 years. That is more where we showcase motion design from designers all over the world in an outdoor space, like at a station. So that's more how you interact in that space, but that is specific for that.
One question actually I'm really curious to ask you would be, so this is something that we've been talking around a lot, I think, with the rise of kind of just animation motion in general, also the access to motion, people wanting things to move. I think there's really kind of like a balance, right, in finding kind of how much should you push it out and how much should you kind of dial it back in terms of kind of finding a balance between meaningful, gratuitous movement. What's your criteria for when motion should be present versus when stillness is more powerful? So how do you kind of find that balance when you work with brands to really go all out with the movement to dialing it back and making it that more intentional, subtle movements?
It should always have a function. So the fact that you use the word gratuitous, I mean, is already too much. Every aspect of an identity we make, it's not only motion, it's also decisions on sound, it's decisions on color, on photography, illustration. It needs to follow the strategy of the brand. It needs to serve a purpose for the target audience at that time. So to fill something up with motion just for the hell of it is, well, wrong. I don't want to say wrong, but isn't something we would advise. So any design decision, but motion also should follow a reason or strategic core why we're doing it. And if it's just fluff, then you should step back and think, okay, what am I doing here and why are we doing it? And is this the right answer? Maybe it's a color choice. Maybe it's a different song. Maybe it's something else. That is the short and long of it.
Yeah, and we do also design without motion. It's not like we
do static still.
We do
print, we do static.
It's not like we force people to make everything move.
Yeah, I guess touching on that, is that something you're finding a lot of clients are asking for, like in terms of like movement as well, like just incorporating that in the branding aspect as well? Like, have you seen a rise in that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, they see us also as specialists in motion. So I think the majority of questions that come in they request for motion. Of course, this is something that we need to, like Wouter said, to talk further and see how relevant it is and where is it necessary. Yeah, and where is it necessary? When is it necessary? And work with them to see that.
Sure. So it's just as much as about like managing the motion and then managing the clients as well, not just like making everything move because they've asked for that, but also, questioning why they want it to move and really, pushing for those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
basically.
what it communicates, what is your message? Different platforms require different kind of animation. So that's something that is something that is always discussed and tested, of course.
Yeah, love it.
Cool. We kind of touched on this question around like the process with the sonic identity and everything being kind of formulated at the same time. But I'd love to dive into that a little bit more and just understand like how, because we are kind of big advocates of the power of sound design, and we really go kind of like in on any projects that we can where we can incorporate sound and elevate the motion through SFX and audio, etc. But in terms of like the actual workflow, do you have like everybody sat together in a room and the sound designers, like what's that kind of like alignment like between the people that are working on the motion and the sound in particular?
You want to take it on process on
well, you can't all sit in the room and do the sound design because then it's a hell of a lot of noise for. We work through it like an identity. So we always have a lead designer in charge of the project. We have a lead sound designer or two. When we first develop overarching principles that connect to the overarching strategy of the client and the brand strategy, and based on these principles, we start to experiment into different sound areas, and together with the client, we selected the right ones, and from the principles and the sound directions, when we go into the nitty and the gritty of the sound, it's not 6 people working on it at the same time. It will be more sound designers with leads and Liza coming towards the first presentation.
Our core is identity. Whatever we approach, like if it's motion or sound, we approach it through that mindset. Our history is our background. It's not that we are an animation studio or a sound studio. We are an identity studio. So it's always using the same systematic in the work, in how we approach any parts of a brand. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's completely wrong, or I don't know what it is. But for us, this is the way. Like it, this feels like we get to the answer, or at least are able to answer a branding question.
I mean, from my point of view, I'd be kind of interested just to get a bit of an understanding of kind of some of the tools and techniques you guys use. So I saw one of your talks slides about you using processing, and that's one that's like I've not really heard about before. It's not one that's kind of like widely used in the industry. So I'd be kind of keen to learn a little bit more about like the tools you use and a little bit behind that, and kind of how that incorporated into everything you do as well.
One thing that we always say, and it's something that we talk about in the talks, we always say like creativity is constant, but how we create is always changing. So we know that. We've seen it in the last 2 years. Like there's a million tools now that are coming up that are, and things are going so fast. So what we do here in the studio is come together once a month to learn different ways of making and doing. It doesn't mean that like if a client comes in and we always understand what a client needs. And for example, if they can only work in After Effects, then okay, we will work in After Effects to deliver. But if there is other possibilities, then we will experiment with different tools. Processing, I think that's interesting because now with vibe coding, it gives you the possibility. I think like now in the studio, everybody's like really addicted to vibe coding because it gives the possibility for visual designers that weren't coders, that are not coders, to start playing around with new tools and using, for example, processing to see their ideas come to life. So this is, so it's not really connected only to processing, but just experimenting and trying and learning new ways of doing.
Yeah. So we use After Effects, we use Cinema, we use Cavalry, we use all of those programs. But then suddenly, designer can become a motion designer with coding, and suddenly, motion designer can become a coder, and suddenly it's all flipped upside down. So we use whatever works, and everybody's making new plugins if it doesn't work. So it's we use whatever works, and if it doesn't work, then we make our own version of it. So that's really nice to see with all the vibe coding.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think especially like all getting together as well and kind of sharing ideas around like what tools they're using as well. Are there any like tools like specifically that you're quite excited to either like try out or like see sort of how that will progress?
I mean,
Google Genie, if that really comes out for the public, we would love to play around with that. I know that there's a beta release coming up.
I mean, but there are so many, there's too many. That I think is maybe the biggest issue. Things are it just goes so fast that it's hard to keep up. Once you get a grip of one thing, it's like, oh no, but now you can do this, you can do that. And not only that, the possibilities of making your own tools are also there. So it's like this huge playground. That becomes really, really exciting.
I think the bottom line is we're using it all.
Yeah.
So we're trying. We're trying it all to see what can you do with it, what can't you do with it, how good is it, and then also keep an open mind that it might not be useful now, but in 2 months' time they have a second bet, and then it'll be very used. So this whole old proverb of you only have one chance to make a first impression, it's bullshit, because everything changes so fast and improves that you need to keep track of everything.
Yeah. And on the other side, we also experiment with unconventional tools, like something that you dismiss for motion. Then you can also get interesting results. We did a whole workshop, I think, with not I think, but we did with Apple, making motion with Keynote. Normally, sit there and we're not handing over proposals with motion from Keynote, but suddenly it has these small effects that become really interesting that nobody uses.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh yeah, I could take that, or screen record, or making things in Excel. I mean, there's so many things that we dismiss, but can give you interesting results to inspire you for something else that I think is worth always looking at.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, even from the standpoint of like being different as well and creating something that's just very out there, like using tools that people aren't using, you're automatically going to get a different output. And I think with everything, like you said, that's changing so much now, like especially in the landscapes. I think for so long, like the kind of standard tools were kind of just Adobe for like creation. And now, that has like exploded massively with the use of AI, different programming tools, and be able to code, and even if you don't know coding. So it's kind of really interesting to see where that's going to take us in terms of like, not only motion, but design and everything else as well.
Speaking of AI, I want to ask about the OpenAI work. Of course, how can we not?
I don't know.
You obviously recently worked on the branding identity for OpenAI's refresh with the motion and the sound. Instantly, I think I saw that video and I was like, I think I know which studio did this. It was an amazing piece of work, and I think that the kind of particularly the sonic as well really stood out to me from that. But I think one thing I'm curious to really understand is, and I think this would kind of anything AI, there's obviously understandably quite a bit of a split in terms of people's opinions about it. A lot of people are fully on board with it. There's a lot of people that don't trust it. They're very anti-AI. For working on a brand that are at the forefront of what's going on in the whole AI space, I'm curious, when you were working on the motion, the sonic, everything that you did for OpenAI, how did you kind of build in like that trust factor? Because I think what you did with the identity was very different. There was a lot of memes going around about how like samey a lot of AI brands were looking, and there was kind of this like visual that was just associated with AI, be it the star and the kind of the kind of glows, and it was all very, very same. I'm very curious to understand that when it came to the thought process of, okay, we're trying to not only differentiate, but also we're trying to build trust in a brand that might not necessarily be trusted by a lot of people. How did that influence both the sonic and the motion and just the identity in general that you worked on with them?
Well, first of all, the identity, the development of the identity, that was the work from the design team, the design studio within OpenAI. And so we collaborated closely with them to bring, when it came to the brand film, that was to bring the brand to life through sound and motion. And I think the heart of OpenAI is research. They're a research company. And if you have that as a starting point, I think that also informs how you approach the design. When we first started on the project, academic beauty was one of the key words that we were given to play with. So if you think of academic, then probably having a whole rainbow of colors, maybe that wasn't really the approach to take. The other idea behind it, and I think that also dictates the image, is of course the typography. It is the AI is based on a LLM, so language is the core. So typography and a very strong typographic language plays a big part. And the typography was developed by Dynamo Foundry. And then the question is about trust. I mean, with all these companies, it is about technology. And of course, when you think of tech, it is quite like just black and white. It is quite cold. I mean, it is not human. So it was finding a way to make that accessible. I mean, we're using, I think, ChatGPT on a daily basis, but how do you make technology feel warm? And that's where motion starts playing a role, or sound, because in motion you start suddenly have like these small movement. It becomes more tangible. You can almost feel it, or you can breathe, and that helps you, I think, to create, that it becomes more, I don't know, I think I've said it on the same thing over and over again, accessible. So that's how I think the approach was, and the whole thing came to life.
And it was very easy because there were so many articles about they all look alike. So it was just very simple. Okay, we need to stay away from that. Simple, and now make it more human. So how do we make it more human and more imperfect and more tangible? And here the sound design went hand in hand as while we created that launch sizzle, and you hear that it's not an afterthought. You hear that it is inherent, and together this motion piece is now used also internally at OpenAI, saying, okay, this is the North Star in motion and sound, and they don't have motion guidelines in that sense yet, but it's used as the North Star, saying, okay, this, and a lot of work is derived from that.
Yeah, seeing it influenced elsewhere.
Yeah, we've also seen that. Yes.
No, it's also unique. It was also to keep things, or really to reduce things to its essence, and look for the simplicity. The technology is so incredibly complex. So overloading and putting everything on top of everything, it's just not helping. Like keeping it very, not basic, but really open and clear was very, very important. And still is, I think.
Yeah, their design team seemed like they're on it. I think that work as well. I think it was Isle of Any. They did that like photography work that kind of went everywhere as well. Like again, it's just very human, very like kind of drawn back, just beautiful. Like a bit more emotive. I think I can imagine they're a cool team to work with by all the stuff I'm seeing put out by them marketing wise. Well, maybe Gemini have taken note, because I saw that they did some motion. Like they kind of really delved into motion recently, didn't they?
Yeah.
There was some.
It's just a different. I mean, I don't think nothing is wrong or right. It is a different approach, and maybe OpenAI now is the norm, and eventually the norm will be, too much the norm, and then it changes again. I mean, you see that in the.
I think as well, Google have obviously been around for a long time, and they've been known for a long time, right? So I guess they probably already got a certain sense of trust built up in a consumer base, whereas OpenAI kind of come in as the new challengers, the newcomers. They needed to differentiate themselves a little bit more, right?
Agree. I think they don't look at OpenAI's product launches and are intimidated by it. They're too big. Too big to care.
No.
No, they're too big and successful, so they wouldn't. Yeah.
I'm interested as well. Like you mentioned that you work quite closely with their internal team. How does that kind of affect your process, or does it at all?
Yeah, we work closely with all of our clients. In essence, in this case, we work together with their internal team. We had a team literally internal last year, so we had a team of 4 in the San Francisco office, working closely together with their design team and with their product team, and that it's really good to. I mean, OpenAI is a huge company, but it's still a startup in some sense, or a scale up, and they pivot. It's crazy, and to be in the middle of that and understand who walks by and what happens, that was really, really useful for us to learn, to understand the reasoning behind some decisions. But working closely with them was great, because we have 3 designers on something working together in the same Figma file and iterating towards a final design together is really worked for both parties.
Yeah,
right?
and we still, I mean, and we still continue to work like that. And we work with many of our clients like that. And I think it's also changed in the last few years. It doesn't feel, it's not like the client, like this sort of hard thing. Oh, the client, and then
The agency.
the agency, and this sort of Mad Men kind of weird presentation. I mean, that's like we're both collectively working for the same thing to make the best possible work we can. So I think that's what is so nice now, that these barriers are no longer there. And maybe it's thanks to, we learned to work online very fast because of COVID. I don't know, that
Yeah.
sort of pushed us all. But I think it's a really positive change.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. Speaking of big tech clients, big tech names, obviously we've touched on OpenAI, Google, but also Apple, Instagram. I'm curious, when companies like that are approaching you, how do you decide which projects you want to pursue? What's your philosophy on balancing commercially significant work with smaller, more experimental projects? Or do you kind of use that as an opportunity to blend those two, use the experimentation quite a lot in these big commercial projects?
Yeah, we blend it always. We try to have a very healthy balance between all types of clients. So big tech versus governmental versus cultural versus startups or scale ups. We try to have a healthy balance there and not be specialized in anything, because I think then you bleed out creatively pretty quickly. People in the studio, designers, motion designers, want to work for different kind of clients to get inspired, and anything you learn from a small cultural client you can apply to OpenAI. Anything you learn from OpenAI you can apply to other clients. We generally look for three things when we are talking with potential new clients. Is what is the ambition, the design ambition of the project? Is there a match there? Are they nice people? Is there a click? It needs to go both ways. I mean, it's just like dating in the end. You're going to go into a project that's 3 months minimum to...
That's as long as your date lasts.
I wasn't done. 3 months to 2-3 years. So you need to have nice people at the table. You need to find a click, because you need some form of a connection. And lastly, you need to have a stupid connection on, you have the budget, and can we deliver on your planning? Because if you want to start tomorrow, we might not have time in our planning. But hey, if this is your planning and this is your budget, then we can get to that. So we look on these 3 points, and then we need to balance out the total portfolio.
And then there's always this misconception that, if you work with OpenAI, that's gigantic. But if you work with a theater that is around the corner, that's really small. In the end, the size of the team and the people you're talking to every day, it's small. It's not like we're not, it's not 1,000 people that are involved in the process. It is always a small group. Yeah, it feels, maybe it's because we're all online, and in the end it feels a lot more intimate and a lot more equal. Everybody's still sitting in their bedrooms and talking about, well, not today.
Everybody's a rectangle on the screen. Yeah.
We're in our bedrooms.
So I guess, like, with working with like some of the bigger clients versus with like the smaller clients, do you find that like the freedom and creativity you get differs, or do you think that now you've kind of got to the stage where even the big clients come to you and guys, like, do your thing, you know what you're doing, and let you kind of take?
We never get told. We never get told.
That's a lie. Myth. Who gets this? I mean, I want to meet those people.
I mean, we can dream, right?
13 years I'm at DUMBAR, we had it once that the client said, forget about everything, you can start with a blank, except for startups maybe, but the client said, throw everything away, you can start new. There's always restrictions, and it's also logical.
It's nice. Also.
Client has a brand heritage, they have a client base, they have users. You don't throw away everything, because it's just a shame. You always build on something.
Yeah, we were shocked when they said, do whatever you want. I was like, this is like a scam. I'm like, background check, is this real? I was like, this is not possible. We can do, and we're going to get paid for this. I was like, this was crazy. But it was real. But Yeah, it's always, but we like restriction. We really, when they said do whatever you want, we were like, we had no idea where
Almost
to
makes the job
start.
harder, right?
What does this mean? You know?
There's always a
Yeah.
heritage. There's always a strategy. We always need to have restrictions in order to create something to help a company get ahead or a brand get ahead. And never are we asked to just
Yeah.
go wild, because
And it
that's
doesn't
crazy.
come easy. Also, it, like sometimes people think, oh, okay, you can get any product, but it's really, really not true. You know, it's presentations, pitches, not creative pitches, but you know, presenting who you are, how we can approach work. It's never handed over.
Yeah.
There's got to be times though where you kind of want to push the boundaries a little bit, right? Like you feel like this needs to go a little bit further than maybe the client's putting restrictions down on. Are there like situations you've had like that? And like, how do you handle both that? And like, how do you put it forward to clients when you're like, we think we should take this a little bit further? Like, these are our thoughts. Is it a case of like showing or through talking? Like, how do you approach situations like that?
Showing. Yeah, we have a presentation moment in the beginning of the design process that we call a kitchen review, where we show sketches. Up until that time, we've only talked. So we've only talked about the project. We've talked about strategy. We've talked about competitors. We've talked about everything. And the client said, okay, this is how far you can go. You can touch this and not this and that. And then, okay, then we start designing. And there we go wild. We go as wild and wide actually as possible. And some sketches will stay too close to the current situation, but some will go too far on purpose, because it has happened multiple times in the past that a client said, okay, you could touch everything except for the logo, but then they have a new strategy, but they still keep to the old logo. And then we make minor tweaks and we show them, okay, but this is what it could be. And then they say, oh, actually it's not that bad. Or they say, don't touch the color yellow. And then we said, well, but if you change it to slight orange hue, then suddenly, oh, wow, it works. So talking about design works to a certain level, but then you need to see it, and then you see the effect of it. And then, so we use these kitchen reviews, and then after that, there's a few more rounds where we go too far, but we do it very respectfully. And we say, look, we heard you, but we also tried this out. What do you think? And if they say absolutely not, fine, then I mean, we throw it away, but that's how we do it actually. And if we don't believe in it, if we think it's a bad idea, then we don't do it for doing sake. So we only do it when we think it really adds something to the brand. The same with the motion discussion we had just now. Like, we don't just add it. It needs to really add to the strategy and to the result. So
yeah,
that's how we do it.
Love that.
Cool. Speaking of experimentation, we are big advocates of kind of experimenting outside of client projects. And something that I saw that your studio do is dedicating bi-weekly kind of group sessions to experimenting, learning motion design, as you said, kind of having these monthly get-togethers to talk about new tools and pushing that. Again, this is something that we really try and find time for outside of working in our studio as well. We find that it just helps us explore and discover new methods that we can bring into our actual client work, etc. I'm curious, like, through these allocated times that you set aside as a studio, like, what discoveries, maybe like unexpected creative directions have you learned about that then has actually come into the client work itself?
I think, yeah, one example is Demo, the festival I mentioned earlier, where it was the early years, like I think in 2017 or 18, where we started experimenting with motion. And through some of those experiments that we had done, they found a way into the public screens here in the Netherlands. So we had a collaboration with the screen owners in the Netherlands, and they asked us to come up with screensavers. So if you don't see the ads, when they didn't play ads, they had screensavers. So they asked us if we could come up with a replacement. And during our lab days, or we actually call it the group when we come together, that's where we experimented and came up with this idea of the cities in motion. It was like this moving typography. And we proposed that to them. And they actually used that, and they had all these moving signs all over the Netherlands. And from that idea, that led to the bigger idea of having a motion festival. So from something very small that we were like playing around, that it went to a project like that, and then went bigger. But we also, I mean, we use that session for, to test different AI tools. What are the results? How can it help us or not? Or
We make
yeah,
twerking machines, so it's really it's a lot of different
yeah, that's true.
things.
Wait, come again?
We made a twerking motion tool where you can just take a picture and then
You just stand there
you
and it
stand
works.
there and then
This is the important shit that comes into client work, right?
This
No,
has
but it
been
has a
very
function.
helpful.
I need to see that. I'm going to send you a photo of Jack
Yeah.
and me.
Be
Please
careful
do.
what you wish for. You need to sign a waiver first, but okay, we'll.
That's awesome.
I'm also interested as well. I saw one of your talks, Liza, about you initially kind of only had like one motion designer and they kind of taught the wider team, which I really love that. I think that's a really great concept. Is that something you still kind of really push today in terms of like everyone teaching, everyone sharing? And, I guess it's difficult as well. I think sometimes like, designers and animators are quite introvert. Like, is that something that they find easy, like sharing and like teaching each other? Or do you think that needs a bit of encouragement as well?
No, they do it all the time. I mean, that's what is so nice, I think, also with the motion community. I think it's slightly different to the traditional graphic designers. I think in the past it was very much my idea, it's my work. Now, because of working with different disciplines and being collaborative, people are a lot more open. And you have it also in the type community. In the motion community, it's really like, oh, I have this new code or new tool or new plugin, and it's always about sharing, because it's really it's the only way you can progress and test and build on. And here in the studio, it's really, some people know some tool, some programs, others the other ones. So that's really a very nice exchange between the teams. There's one motion designer. He actually has his own YouTube channel for touch designer that you can follow. He does share his knowledge publicly, but we also get questions from students or other colleagues. Hey, how did you make that? Can you explain to it? And we're always open and willing to share. It shouldn't be
To a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like,
Give
it's no
me an
point.
After Effects course on how you make
give me your work files.
Retire. You don't hand over files, but you explain, okay, this is made. It's like a cookbook. I mean, you're not going to make the same.
And I think one thing we do in the studio is to make sure that we have the culture and the people that want to share and that are open into it. You can also have a studio where people are still very much about their idea and their thing, and leave me alone, and I'm the champion of this, and this is my thought. But we try to leave the ego at the door. We're all making work together, and if you take my idea and it gets better, then all good for you. It's for us.
Yeah. 100%. I think seeing that evolve as well, like in terms of like, like where your idea starts and, you share that and the iterations that goes through. It's like, it's really interesting to see that. And I think we see a lot, especially like motion design, like you see people like share a tutorial and like, oh, I use this technique in Cavalry, and then someone takes it and does this with it. And then they add type and then they add audio. And it's like, it kind of spider webs out from there, and you end up with stuff that's, completely different in kind of all directions.
Question off the back of that, when you're kind of looking at new talent to bring into the team, how do you balance kind of pure skill set versus willingness to learn, or people that you can kind of sense that eagerness in them to either share or be learning from others? We're hiring at the minute, and it's something we're balancing between is like the mid to senior level, and really trying to like find someone that is a culture fit, but also somebody that is going to kind of share knowledge with the team and help each other grow. When you're looking for talent, is that just a matter of time as to whether you need more skill sets versus more of that kind of like grit and determination and growth, or is it kind of a balance of the both? I'm just curious, like you've obviously got some amazing designers working your team, like when it comes to those decision processes on who to hire, like what does that look like as well?
It's a balance.
Yeah, it's a gut. You also, when you meet someone, you have this gut feeling like, oh, okay, this person is really going to fit the team. It's not like not everybody is introverted, not everybody's extrovert. It's also understanding if they would also feel comfortable to be here. That's one thing we do request, that we want people here in the studio and they work in Rotterdam. We don't really, unless it's a freelancer, we don't really work with a remote team. We really believe that you need to be here. So if there's that willingness that you want to move here, or maybe you're already living here and feel comfortable in a team of 35, 40 people. And of course it is you can feel it, you can see it in the sketching and in the work, like in the exploration. It's, I don't know.
But it needs to be a balance. You can be raw talent, but then you don't want to collaborate at all. That's not something you teach somebody. It needs to be inherent in you that you want to collaborate. And but if it's somebody who collaborates a lot but has no talent or no skill, it doesn't work. So it's both. And I think there's an eagerness that we are looking for, and I mean not an eagerness to work for us, but an eagerness to drive to create better and better work and to try new things. Not somebody who says, okay, I know Figma and that's my tool and I know how to do this trick and that's where I'm good at, and thank you and please hire me. It's like, okay, no, I'm interested in the world and I want to try that and I want to do this, and I'm also a jazz pianist and I also do juggling, and hire me and I can sing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
All rounder.
And in the end, I think once you're here, because there's so many different influences and you collaborate, then it's the opportunity that you can grow, because it's really that collaboration. Some people join and you think, how is this going to work out? And you see after, in a year's time, and they grow so much, and I think it's really impressive to see.
Cool. I love that. Thanks for that. I love picking people's brains around this, because again, like I said, we're on the hunt at the minute. So whenever I'm talking with the studios we look up to, it's always cool to hear about the process and thought around that goes into bringing in new talent. Speaking of the future, looking forward, question I just always love to ask. I'd love to know, what are you both excited for moving forward? Not just necessarily for Studio Dumbar, but also just the industry in general. What's on the horizon, what's exciting you, what's getting you up in the morning?
We always get this question. And we wrote down a bunch of really silly answers.
Don't tell me that.
We got excited now, Bluetooth. Like, we heard Bluetooth is a thing, so maybe that's something that
we just made a tape for demo,
like a cassette tape.
So we are really touching on the latest technology.
Vinyl.
We're working on vinyl.
We literally are really
working on vinyl. So we're really reaching, like, we're going beyond the limits.
Forget about Bluetooth, but to find it, I mean, the obvious answer is AI, but it's also such a stupid answer. But what we see, what's happening with those tools and what's possible, and now the release of Genie and what you can do. I mean, there's a lot of issues to solve there. It's not all fun and games and not without its challenges, but potential upside on this and the potential period of this seems to be limitless. We need to figure out a lot of stuff, like its effect on the environment and stuff, but that is the obvious answer here.
And then all this and making sure that we remain human, like there is the human aspects, that it's not, I know there's a lot of new tech, but that the humanity part, that it's tangible, that you can feel the work, that there's a warmth to the work, that I think is something that we always look for.
Nice. I like that. Jack, you got anything else?
No, I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think I guess it's always hard, especially with everything like evolving so quickly, like you guys mentioned, with all the different tools and, you know, especially with AI and everything that's going on with that. So yeah, I really love the idea that you're, you know, going back and, you know, really experimenting with like older techniques and, you know, seeing where that can go and how you can, you know, be different in that way as well. Because I think you can definitely keep chasing, you know, and going forward and, you know, using the like latest cutting edge tools, but then also actually what's behind you as well, like what you can use there and how you can use that to create something different as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that Bluetooth thing out you mentioned.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can
Have to.
send me a download link.
I have more. Big data seems to be a big thing.
Floppy disks.
These buzzwords, like every year there's a new buzzword at the conference. Like, and of course now it's AI. Well, back it was big data.
Metaverse. Remember
Oh
metaverse?
God, yeah, that came to mind, didn't it?
You remember
Thank God.
€5 million?
Did you buy one?
My old company bought me one. I think I used it about 3 times, and then that was that.
Wow.
But hey, it's been amazing to have you both on. Thank you very much for taking the time and jumping on. We'll probably bump into each other at something this year. I don't know what events you both have got planned. I know we briefly saw each other at Web Summit. Don't know if you've got anything planned this year as well.
At DNAD probably this year. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Come along to Paradigms. It's the one I always plug.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Paradigms is a good one. Their Builders Club were there last year talking on the OpenAI Super Bowl film.
Ah, nice.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a good one to check out.
Yeah, always good fun.
I think actually, Liza, I think I passed your name along because they were looking for some speakers. I think I passed your name along. So maybe you'll
might get a free ticket.
I said, yeah, get her a free ticket. Bring her along. She's awesome. But no, it's been really, really cool chatting with you again. Like, I've been really, really looking forward to this one. As always, I want to get a little like peace signs up because we've got to get a little thumbnail for LinkedIn. So we'll just get that.
There we go.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, really, really awesome. And I really hope that I'll get to bump into you again somewhere soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Catch you in a bit, both. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.